Hello, my fellow readers. This is I, Dark Symphony 777, with another fanfiction review. Excuse me. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications, leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts of the story. And this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, it's about time I got to, personally, one of my favorite fanfictions of all time. This is a story I've been considering wanting to review for a while, but it's always been on the back burner because I really love the story. Like, this is personally one of my favorite fanfictions ever. Despite the fact it's not my favorite Resident Evil fanfiction, it's probably just a very, very close second. But I personally have a lot of enjoyment out of this, just as much as the other one. And that is Darkness Arises Redux by Metal Harbinger. Oh, what a goddamn story. This story was phenomenal. Now, I would like to start off by saying that this story is actually a remake of the original Darkness Arises by the same author. He wanted to actually redo everything for a remake and fix all the problems with the original story. I will be mentioning them, the ones I do remember, as the review goes along. But I will say this: there is nothing wrong with the story. It is close to perfection, and it is just so good. I just really wanted to talk about this story. This is a story I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. So, let's get started. So, we start with the main character, Jake Cavagnow, or Cavagnow? Koffinghoff. I don't know. His name is just completely confused. It's like, I can't pronounce it without, like, I always seem to pronounce it, like, different. I don't know why. So, he gets a call from a mysterious man who basically offers him a job worth $10 million. The job is, Mr. Cavagnow, you are to go to Raccoon City, kill a man by the name of William Birkin. And Jake's like, I'll do it. 10 million, see? Mm-hmm. Is he a good person? No, he's a very bad person. What did he do? He created bioweapons. For what? For war. Alright, this definitely sounds like that definitely does not sound like a good person. I'll do it. Sorry, I couldn't resist. So, basically, he goes to Raccoon City, and look what happens. The Raccoon City incident happens. Oh, zombies, and Mr. X, and Nemesis, and Lickers, and Hunters, and Drain Demos. I never understood the name for that one. But he basically gets wrapped up in the events of the various Resident Evil games that take place in Raccoon City. Resident Evil 2, 3, and Outbreak. Now, it doesn't have anything to do with Operation Raccoon City, because I'm pretty sure that game came out after he already finished it, and even if he did, he probably said, no, fuck this. This game's garbage. This is garbage. So basically he starts out, he enters Raccoon City, he ends up in Jay's bar and the events of Outbreak, and so he has to go, and so once he realized the Raccoon City is like going to shit, he's trying to find a safe place so he can still continue his mission, kill William Birkin, and then he finds out that William Birkin is dead. And he's like, fuck, now I just need to get out of here. And then he gets knocked out, and he's like, oh no, William Birkin's not dead. And he's like, yeah, alright. Alright. And then he finally escapes. I'm completely paraphrasing it because I'm trying to literally the story is just, he gets hired to kill William Birkin, he enters Raccoon City, the Raccoon City incident happens, he gets wrapped up in it, he tries to escape, he finds out William's dead, he finds out that William's not dead, and then he goes after William again. He goes into RPD, he goes underneath the RPD, into the Umbrella facility, he fights William Birkin a bunch of times, he kills William Birkin a bunch of times, he escapes, and then a bunch of stuff happens afterwards. That's the first part of that story. Now the second part is He's escaping. The mysterious benefactor, who is not really mysterious if you know Resident Evil lore, shows up, gives him the money. He's like, "Oh, I want you to join me." Jake goes, "Fuck no." The mysterious man, mysterious, just says, "Oh no, you're gonna work for me." Destroys the money with like die packs, and it says, "No, we're just gonna kill you." No. Jake goes, "No, fuck no. I'm gonna kill all of you." So he kills all of them. He like goes through a city called Springvale. He finds out that there's a member of that STARS unit in that city held hostage. He rescues her, plays Good Samaritan. Meets a couple other survivors from Springvale, and then they team up. They meet a guy named Fortune, and then the story ends with a sort of campaign for Fortune, which is supposedly supposed to be like the background of how the BSAA was created. Because despite the fact, all the stuff with the Resident Evil lore, the one thing I've always been curious about is how was the BSAA actually founded? Like, we knew the circumstances behind it. We knew Chris and Jill, as far as we know, were like two of the founders. But we don't know the creation behind it. So the story kind of lays the groundwork for like the eventual creation of the BSA, which I kind of liked, and I think was really well done. The overarching plot is actually really good. Now, the thing with the original story kind of kept the same plot. Like, this is the only thing that's the only thing that's very similar, is that it's just basically the same thing. Just how it goes on is completely different. Like, for instance, when in the original version, when they're fighting William Birkin, the dog phone, when he turns into the dog and in the chain waiting for the elevator. In the original version, Jake decides to do something very stupid, run up a wall, jump on Jake, and ride him like a doggy. A good doggy. A very good, razor sharp, good doggy. That might eat people. Good doggy. But in this one, he basically says, "I'm not fucking now. No, I'm just basically pelt it with bullets." And in the original version, Jake kind of turns into like a personal BLW. While in the Redux version, he doesn't. He gets infected, but he's cured of it. And there's a lot of other smaller details of it. So, you know, but it's more. But all the other small details are more just grand scheme of things that kind of bridge everything together. I will talk about them a little later. But the overarching plot, in terms of the first plot with the Raccoon City, that's expertly well done, because we see Jake go into Jay's bar to set up the events of Outbreak, because canonically, in terms of timeline, Outbreak is the first game to take place in Raccoon City. Canonically. Like, chronologically. Like, you can't count Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1 because they take place in the mountain range outside of Raccoon City. They're not considered part of Raccoon City. Like, when they consider Resident Evil 0 and Resident Evil 1 are both called the Mansion Incident, while Outbreak 3 and 2 are considered the Raccoon City Incident. So, you know, a little lore background. And so him trying to escape with, like, some of the other Outbreak characters, they separate. He runs into some of the Resident Evil 3 characters, Nikolai, I forgot the other guy. I forgot the good silver hair guy. I remember, I'm having a brain fart. He runs into Brad. They run into Nemesis. Jake kind of teams up with Brad to take out Nemesis temporarily, because it's Nemesis. Like, you think a falling building and like a homemade IED of nothing but nails is gonna stop Nemesis? No, they got tanks of freaking railgun. So if Nemesis can tank a railgun, I'm pretty sure he can tank a C4 in a building collapsing on him. And then he goes into the RPD. He sees everyone's still alive. The RPD, like, every single shelter gets overrun when the author introduced more and more BOWs. Like, he was in the bank was actually secure, and then Drain Demos shows up and literally just starts killing everyone because everyone was just expecting zombies. And the same thing happened with the RPD, same thing happened with, all the other locations. So take it as you will. And then Jake leaves the RPD, tries to escape. He gets he gets knocked out and just basically told William Birkin's not alive. He goes, and then what happens before he heads back to the RPD? Before he heads back to RPD, he meets up with Jill. They fight Nemesis again. They meet Carlos, and then they separate again. Then he gets knocked out, gets told Birkin's still alive, and then he has to go back to the RPD where he's wrapped up with the events of Resident Evil 2, and then him, Claire, Leon, Kevin, and Alyssa all team up to fight Birkin. I'll mention Kevin and Alyssa at the end. And then they all escape. Kevin, Jake, he's a career criminal. He kind of gets found out. He leaves to go deal with the mysterious benefactor and tell him, fuck no. And then the whole set B plot with him having to escape the mysterious man. And then deal with like his troops and stuff like that, and save the other STARS members, and then kind of get the Springdale STARS members and stuff like that, and then kind of becomes a good guy sort of thing. He was always kind of a weird. I'll talk more about Jake in the characters, and that's pretty much the whole plot. The plot was structured beautifully, like it had a clear indicator. Like everything after Raccoon City kind of felt more like an epilogue more than anything, or even better yet, kind of felt like a second act, while the last 3-4 chapters were more or less just an extended epilogue. You can kind of go with that. Everything was executed incredibly well. There was so much going on, but the story focused exclusively on what Jake was doing. Every single other character in the story was kind of were mainly side characters, because the story focused exclusively on Jake as the main character. And I think that deserves credit for a unique kind of whole scenario in this type of story, because the most common type of Resident Evil stories are the ones that take place during the events of other games. So, like, in my opinion, the other really good Resident Evil fan fiction is Project Lucifer, which takes place in Resident Evil during the events of Raccoon City. I can't remember. I think the only game that game actually intersects with is 3. I believe so. And then of course you have Enduring the Evil, which are more retellings of each game with more just extra content and stuff with other characters and stuff like that. I'm pretty sure, with the exception of like a couple chapters of 3, Project Lucifer is pretty much off in its own exclusive. Either Resident Evil 3 or Resident Evil Outbreak. It's pretty much just excluded to like its own thing. But with Darkness Arises, there is plenty of areas where they're new that I don't think are explored in the games. And Jake visits them, and all the shenanigans that goes on, him wandering through the streets, like, for the most part, he's literally by himself. So we're pretty much exclusively focused on him. And that actually segues us to the characters. Now, there's 3 types of characters in the story. There is Jake, all the other canon characters, and everyone else. Let's start with the canon characters. Now, the canon characters actually pretty much act the same. It's the ones that the author doesn't really have to focus the most time on, mainly due to the fact since they already have actual characters, and we just play the games to understand them or do research. There wasn't much focus put on them outside of maybe the Outbreak crew, mainly because the Outbreak crew is not really remembered that much, mainly because Outbreak is more just an underrated game. It's still a good game, it's just a lot of people tend to forget about it. I mean, the most relevant thing of Outbreak turned out to be that Alyssa Ashcroft was alive, because we were confirmed that she was alive in Resident Evil 7. It's actually kind of a big deal. I mean, I was actually surprised when it's like, oh yeah, wait, Alyssa. no, it can't be the same one. It can't be. And that's pretty much what happened. It's like, oh, she's alive? Damn. Who else survived? But that's more of a thing with how Outbreak worked, because no one really knows, canonically outside of Alyssa, no one really knows if any of them are alive. Like, it took until 2017 to find out Alyssa was alive. So, are we gonna get any details on anyone else? That's like the big thing. It's like, is anyone else, are you gonna mention anyone else? Like, you're surprised that we got Alyssa. Where's like Kevin or Mark or Yoko or Cindy or George, stuff like that. But then that's it. With all the other characters, this was very much a very well executed group of characters, because let's be honest, there are a lot of characters. There are 50 or so something characters. I'm just guessing. There's a shit ton of characters in the story. There's so many names to remember. There's like David McGraw. There's Celia. There is Jason. There is Mark. There's Eric. There's Samantha. There's Elsa. There's so many people that it's just completely hard to keep track of. But all of them have the same purpose, and that is to be world building. Like, this story is one of the few Resident Evil stories I ever read that gave the sense that anyone can die. And that's really hard to do with Resident Evil, because usually when it comes to the main characters, like, okay, they're gonna survive. You know how the story works. Like, they're the main characters, they survive. In this case, like all the canon characters like Jill and Barry and Carlos and Claire, and all those, they survive. That's fine. And then we have all these extra variables, like, because all these characters have so much character development crammed in such a small time frame, because for the most part, like I said, Jake is literally about 90% of the story, he's by himself. Like, probably not 90%, probably about 80% of the story, he's by himself. So it really gives the gravitas of, we may never see these characters again. Like, we don't know if they lived, we don't know if they died. And I like the fact that the author went out of his way to kind of leave a lot of the characters actually very ambiguous. Like with Jason, he had his whole shtick with him being a troublemaker with the cops, and there was another cop that actually kind of butted heads. Him and Jake got separated, but we don't know what happened to him, and so I like that that sense of vagueness, because that leaves up the possibility of, like, did he die? Did he live? And that's honestly what makes all these minor characters stand out, because the author crams as much information as he can, but still leaves things as vague as possible, to give the sense that, and to give the absolute sense of that anyone could die feel. And that included Jake himself. It was actually this was the only Resident Evil story when I was first reading through it, on the possibility that Jake could actually, the main character could actually die. That took a lot of work to be able to pull that off. It's like, is Jake gonna escape Resident Evil? Is he gonna escape Raccoon? Like, I don't know. Especially when they were in the underground laboratory where William Birkin was, and Jake got infected by the T-virus, and they were trying to scramble with trying to find a cure. It's like, is he actually gonna make it? I was legitimately in suspense over the possibility of him actually dying. And it was like, would the author actually pull it off? I don't know. But that leaves a lot of things, because when it's not focusing on Jake, it's focusing on a bunch of other characters for like a paragraph or two, and then it switches back to Jake. Because the story points it out all the time. This is Jake's story. Everyone else is literally just there to just build up mystique around Jake, kind of explore the world, give us all these dynamic characters that, you know, can and sometimes actually do die immediately after we're introduced to them. There is so much dynamicism in these characters that is astounding. That the fact that the author managed to pull off like all these different character types, get all this good character development in such a short time frame, but not compromising the story of what it's trying to be in terms of the point of view, in terms of the world building, and still made it very, very consistent. That is really insane when you think about it. That level of consistency, that level of, you know, multitasking, various plot lines and stories, and all these things. Granted, a lot of it was mainly due to the fact it's really just one big plot point, and a lot of this stuff is really only happens when they're like, Jake finds himself in a safe house, so take it as you will. But now we get to the big elephant in the room, and that is Jake himself. Jacob Cavagnol, the Red Dragon. Holy shit, what a character. If not for Valkyrie from Fusion of Destinies 2, this guy would probably be my favorite original character in literally any fanfiction. And I only like Valkyrie more because of what the author did in terms of deconstruction. From a pure character standpoint, Jacob stands head and shoulders over Valkyrie. Like, I freaking love this guy. So basically, what is Jacob's deal? He's basically a hardened criminal. He was bullied as a kid, mainly because his father was actually a war veteran who was very drunk, and so his father picked on Jacob. And after that, Jacob, because of his loner nature and because Jacob's older brother Ryan was pretty much a criminal, people tended to pick on Jacob. Jacob learned self-defense. He basically had some friends. One of his friends moved away. Another one of his friends actually died. He nearly died himself. He found love of his life. She died from her father because they found out that she was pregnant. You know, he lived a life of like paranoia sort of deal, where he was like always looking over his shoulder, because he eventually became a hitman. Because, you know, like, society kept like not really trying to screw him over, but more he kind of realized the bet he made himself into, and he realized he's just gonna try and survive as best he can given the circumstances. So he deliberately grabbed the shovel and just kept digging himself deeper, knowing that, you know, one day he's gonna die. One day, but he had that honor. Like, when he was a hitman, he only went after other criminals. He didn't go after kids. He didn't go after people who were innocent. If someone got offered him a job to kill an innocent, for example, near the end of the story, he kind of reveals the backstory of another character, kind of ties to it, and he revealed that it was a crooked cop. I'm not gonna name names because this happens at the very end of the story. It was a crooked cop, and a very goody two-shoe shop was actually getting on his tail. And so he hired Jake to kill that guy and anyone who might be a witness. When Jake found out about the other witnesses, i.e. a wife and kids, he basically told the guy, "Go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. I'm not killing them." And so the crooked cop, tried to eject Jake. He died. Jacob got a scar on his collarbone because of it. And that kind of sets up his ruggedness of just being a hitman with a very sensible honor code. And that's what really ties this thing together with his grudge against Umbrella. He's not fighting against Umbrella because they're evil. He's fighting against Umbrella because everything they did involving Raccoon killed dozens of innocent lives. People who didn't need to die. People who, in his eyes, weren't criminals, and therefore they were free to go. And that really defined his character. Now, is his character all good? I mean, there's still some rough edges. Like I said, the vagueness of all the other characters kind of went around with him, because despite the fact we got 2 entire chapters of nothing but his backstory, there's still a whole lot of vagueness because he lived like such a big ass life that even with like I said, 2 very long chapters of his backstory. First off, the first one was literally some of his criminal career, and the other one was his childhood. It still looks like we haven't gotten the full picture of who he is, like what defines him. We know he's a hitman. He has a honor code where he doesn't kill innocents. He doesn't really try to attack people indiscriminately. He tries to go after only people that are pretty much untouchable, that have a lot of money in their back pocket, that can bribe officials, that are completely irredeemable in his eyes, like people that don't deserve to live anymore, rapists, murderers, stuff like that. And that he's willing to tell people no, even if he gets like a lot of money, because innocent people might be put in danger. But it still feels like we're missing like large pieces of the puzzle, like how did he become so famous? How did he become so well known? His connection with the Irish American O'Bannon family. There's a lot to dissect with this one character that I can if I want to, I can easily just make a separate video just talking about his character, because it's that complex in this over 500,000 story that I could literally spend a half hour just talking about him. That's how well thought out the author put his character. Now, in the original, I'm not gonna lie, he was a Gary Stu. Like, there is no excuse. Like the whole William Birkin thing, like writing Birkin like is a good doggy. Like, really. And also getting like telekinetic powers and pyrokinesis and stuff like that. There was so much over the topness that despite the fact I actually do have a soft spot for the original Darkness and Rises in a sort of so bad it's good sort of way. But with this one, I just love everything about it. Like I said, Jake is ending with characters, Jake is a phenomenal character. I want to go more into detail on him, but I can't because this video, as of right now, like looking at the timer, and it's like the video is nearly a half an hour long. So take it as you will. Take it as how good of a character he is. I can easily just make an entire video just talking about him. And the sheer amount of work the author went in. That's not even talking about the fact that Jake was actually, can actually turn into a tyrant. And that's the whole reason why the mysterious person wanted him. Despite the fact that, lore actually says there's actually, it's not as rare as you think. We actually seen in official Resident Evil canon people turning into tyrants. So it's not like, oh, he's the chosen. It's not the chosen one sort of thing. We've seen it happen before, and it can happen and has happened. So take it as you will. Grammar wise, there are a couple grammar errors spread throughout the story. The worst one was the author forgot a cutaway, like when they were talking about like 2 different groups, and then it kind of smushed the library. I think it was a library group and another group. And they kind of inadvertently smushed them together without leaving a break to kind of cut away to showcase like, oh, here's something that's happening somewhere else sort of thing. But that's the worst of the errors. Writing style, I actually mentioned this earlier. The writing style is phenomenal in that, like I said, it focuses exclusively on Jake. Any character that it focuses on, they're either going to die or they're just getting some kind of small background check. This is Jake's story, and so the author tries to make it so Jake is literally the focus of everything at all times. Even when other characters are just when shit hits the fan, there is a sense of like, oh, here's how everyone's reacting. Like for example, when Jake gets to the bank, there is a series of stuff that happens before the Drain Demos attack, and there's a bunch of other characters. And we're still given the sense of like, oh, here's a random bunch of characters, and they're all just talking normally, and then the Drain Demos attack, and then immediately after those characters, and it just has Jake saying, oh, he hears something, and he pulls out the gun. And he's like, it's badass time. But the writing makes excellent use of focusing on exclusively one character while simultaneously making every other character not only a minor character, but also at the same time making them worth so much more than being a minor character. And that takes talent. That takes pure talent. I'm gonna clap for Metal Harbinger. This story is freaking phenomenal. Would I recommend this story? Is the sky blue? Wrong answer, because the sky technically is kind of blue, but at the same time it's not. I didn't know that. Is water... Am I wearing a red shirt? Yes. I would recommend this story literally 100 times in a row. I love this story. Let me put this in perspective. Better Off Alone tier. These are the stories I consider the best of the best. You want to know what current theme with all of them is? They all have shades of drama. Drama is my favorite genre of any genre. Darkness Arises was the first non-drama story to be put in that tier. Even they call her Ruby, is still technically kind of a drama because there's a lot of despite its really creative writing, there's still a lot of drama packed into it in the liberation of who Ruby Gloam is. But this was the first non-drama fanfiction to earn that tier. Not even Project Lucifer, which is personally my favorite Resident Evil fanfiction, doesn't have that tier. This, despite the fact I just simply love Project Lucifer slightly more, all around, this is just such a better story that I only really like Project Lucifer because I love the characters. Everything else is actually pretty okay. But this is kind of inverse of that. It does everything well except for giving us a great group of characters, where it really only just gives us one really great character in Jake, and everyone else is just minor to the point that they're not really relevant. Hence why I only really talked about Jake in any detail, because of how the story's written. It kind of leaves us up for who survived, like I said, the whole who survived, who died thing, and where the author goes from there. Because the story did end on a cliffhanger, and there's lots of loose ends that needs to be answered. But Project Lucifer is like has a really great core group of characters, a good story, good pace. Like that's really it. I just personally like the characters of Project Lucifer more than all the characters minus Jake in Darkness Arises. Do I have a favorite part of the story? Yes. And that is the entire sequence of Resident Evil 2. So let's kind of go on this in detail. Jake finds out that William Birkin's still alive by the mysterious benefactor. Goes to the RPD, meets Claire, and Leon finds out that Sherry is still alive, goes to save her, meets another cop who actually survived. They run into Mr. X. They fight Mr. X twice. Mr. X kills the cop. They go and meet Ben, who ends up, dying. They meet Ada, sort of thing. Everything's kind of like basic. And then they go into the lab. The lab is freaking amazing because there's, first off, the author expands upon the lab like redonkulously, by having an entire chapter just dedicated to Jake and Annette Birkin kind of butting heads psychologically. There's an entire sequence when we actually are given like all of this Resident Evil fan service. Like he sees the other. He finds out about all these information, like what they're called liquors, stuff like that. He runs into Neptunes. He runs into the cockroaches from Resident Evil 1. He finds out what Cerberus, Crimson Head, stuff like that. And then the author has the brass balls to bring back 3 characters from Outbreak into the events of Resident Evil 2. And I literally lost my shit. Like, when I first read that part, it's like in a dark hallway. And he just found out he got infected with the T-virus by a Crimson Head because they inadvertently clawed his leg. He hears something around. He turns around. He sees like the vent open. He has the gun out, and then he sees a backpack fall. It's like, wait, a backpack? What? And then Yoko Suzuki from Outbreak 1 is like, no! I literally lost my shit when Yoko just showed up out of nowhere. It's like, no! No! The author pulled that? The author's bringing back the Outbreak characters. I'm like cheering this on. It's like, holy shit, this is so awesome. And then Alyssa Ashcroft shows up. It's like, holy shit, she's here too. Who's next? Kevin? And then Kevin shows up. It's like, damn. And I'm freaking just loving everything that happens in this sequence of just literally losing my shit to seeing the Outbreak characters because the Outbreak is like a unique situation where, for the most part, the Outbreak kind of stays away from everyone. While Jill actually wanders all around Raccoon City, and Leon and Claire, they kind of go through the RPD and then in the sewers and then into the lab, and that's it. But literally seeing 3 characters, the Outbreak crew, just show up because with everything happening, it was actually happening very somewhat canonly. So it was legitimately a swerve to see characters from 2 different Resident Evils kind of meet up, because Alyssa and Kevin do actually run into Leon and Claire, and they do team up to fight Birkin. And I'm like, this is just fucking awesome. This is just, and it takes a lot for me to curse, even Angelica, and this, just having this happen. Like, this is just fan service. And then the author even makes like a custom scenario where they run into the Stingers from Resident Evil 0 and fight their mother, like their queen. It was just 2 or 3 chapters of nothing but pure fan service for like the hardcore Resident Evil fans. And I'm a hardcore Resident Evil fan. I don't have the merch, but I played a lot of the games. And so seeing all this fan service and all these things, kind of like, this is freaking dope. And then Yoko dies from, a Crimson Head. They find a lot of information. All 5, like Jacob, Leon, Alyssa, and Kevin, they deal against William Birkin. And there's just so much freaking awesome of them just, dealing with Birkin and then dealing with Annette and then Ada and all that stuff. And then Leon finding out that, Jake's a criminal. And even when they leave Resident Evil, like, Leon actually, Jake's about to, bye, and then, Leon cocks the shotgun and points at him and said, no, you ain't going anywhere, dirtbag. And then and then Claire and Sherry and Alyssa and Kevin are, confused, no, Annette gave me the information, I know you're a criminal. And they're, freaking out. But then Alyssa plays peacekeeper, saying, no, if it wasn't for Jake, we wouldn't be here. And if it wasn't for us, he wouldn't be here. So at least give him the benefit of doubt and let him leave. And then they send in Sherry, and we got a little humorous situation. And it's like, why are you in Raccoon City? It's like, someone paid me to kill William Birkin. How much were you being paid? 10 million. It was just that whole sequence. What was it? Chapter 30 to chapter 46. So 16 chapters, but only I think one of them, like, it's only when they enter the, I think it's only like chapter 36 to 46. I think so. Just 10 chapters of just pure fan service. And that's not even talking about the stuff with like the mysterious man having his troops like clean up and kill Jake running into a umbrella scientist who's like trying to redeem herself and then dies immediately after they separate. There's just so much stuff going on. It's just pure, unbridled fan service. And again, just seeing, but the best part is, like I said, just seeing the Outbreak crew show up out of nowhere was just a freaking epic feeling that like I said, I lost my shit. I was like, oh my god. And then having them all team up to fight Birkin was just the icing on the cake. Like, sure, we didn't see what happened with the Tyrant, but then again, Claire was dealing with him, and Jake was with Claire, so take it as you will. But it was just such an awesome series of chapters that everything that happened, I was just freaking cheering. I was freaking cheering all of them on, just going full ham. That leaves the question, what can I do to change the story? Nothing. The best I can do is offer where does Metal Harbinger go from here? Because there are like several separate things he can do. First off, he can clear up how David what happened with David and his crew. There's the whole thing with Springville, because the author did say he was planning on writing a separate story focusing on the events of Springville to kind of flesh out the characters that were introduced there, like Sarah Quigley, and Angela Catalano, and Arachne. And granted, I don't think that's going to be, if he does do that, that's nowhere near as long as Darkness Arises, because, like, the story even points out Springville's just completely smaller town than Raccoon City. Still pretty big, but on scope, it's smaller than Raccoon City. There's the whole thing with Yoko Suzuki. Like, okay, so very much what happened. Yoko Suzuki died. She was kind of tangling with a Crimson Head. She lost her medallion, which she thought was good luck, and then she pulls the Crimson over the rail to keep Kevin alive. And then at the end of the story, Jake sees Yoko alive, and he's like, and he's confused. And I think the author before Metal Harbinger does anything with Springville, anything with David McGraw, anything further, he needs to put a bud in this Yoko Suzuki plot hole, like, because it honestly feels like he's trying to set something up with Yoko. But again, the big thing before we advance with any other story is we have to nip this in the bud. So what I would propose is, one day, as they're starting preparations, Jake approaches Alyssa and Kevin, saying that he looked on TV, saw that Yoko was still alive. And Kevin and Alyssa, they're like too busy with everything going on, and it's like, wait, she's alive? But then Kevin's like, oh, wait, I saw her die. And have like part of the story be them trying to locate Yoko so they can try to find out what's going on. And then they find Yoko, and then the rest of the story is like a big old flashback to Raccoon City, but everything is from Yoko's point of view, of just her explaining what happened and how she got out. And honestly, the author can just do anything. Like, you can do what they did with Jake and say, oh, she technically qualified as a tyrant, and so she is under the effects of the T-virus, and all that sort of thing. You can do that she was a clone. You can do whatever you want with her. But what I would propose is, like, after she pulls the Crimson Head over the railing, they fall. The Crimson Head, she manages to like turn the Crimson Head around. She squashes the Crimson Head and kills it, and she's dying. And then Ada Wong shows up. Ada Wong, sees that Yoko is still alive, points the gun, and then she realizes that she was with Jake and all of them, and so she kind of doesn't have it in her heart to, you know, do the deed. And, she patches her up. She actually has, like, a second, she said that she knows a way to heal her. Again, you can do whatever, you can just have Ada randomly had the daylight virus, the daylight cure, and then injects it with her. You can do whatever you want. And so the story kind of continues on from there with Ada and Yoko escaping from the back. I believe there was a side story in Umbrella Chronicles that explains how Ada escaped Raccoon City. You can literally adapt that, but just add Ada and Yoko. Just have it be Ada and Yoko instead of just Ada by herself, and just have that, and also showcase the explosion happening from Yoko's point of view, and then Ada just lets Yoko go. It's like as much as it pains me to say this, have it be like Ada lets Yoko go, but Yoko owes Ada a favor because she's kind of warming up to Leon, and so lets Yoko go on for just to let Leon just to make Leon happy if like he's watching and stuff like that. And after that, you can just do whatever you want. You want to do Springville, you can do Springville. You want to do like David McGraw and kind of going back into like more lore with like what happens. Like you could even do a separate story, like an entire story just dedicated to explaining what happens to anyone whose lives were kind of left vague. Like you can have them be, oh, they die. This person, like, have a couple, like a chapter just dedicated to each character. And that would be a really cool thing. Like I said, there's so many directions you can kind of go with this, and I think like I said, the big ones would be David McGraw, Springville, and most importantly Yoko Suzuki, because I think that would really gnaw on everyone's mind until we find an answer to that. Because I think that would probably be the biggest thing, because you could even have Yoko kind of tie into the events of Springville. There's that, but again, you can go whatever direction you want. Final thoughts. This was close to a perfect story. I love the story. I think more people should read it. I think it has 171 reviews. That's sad. For a story of this quality to have this many reviews, I get the meme, like all the ones that are quality but get like the mincemeat, but all the really bad ones that are just mediocre, that's just capitalizing on fads, are the ones who get popular, and then like once they end, people are like, oh, that story was bad. It's like pretty much what happened with Twilight. But yeah, that's Darkness Arises. Oh, I just realized the name was called Reborn, not Redux. Sorry about that, Metal Harbinger. This story was as close to perfect you can get. This story was just sheer adrenaline from beginning to end. This had been Dark Symphony 777. Go read this story. Please, just go do yourself a favor and read this story. And I will leave you with Cut.